So how's everyone tonight? Good? Can you hear me okay? Perfect. So I have to get my cheat notes out here. So one of the things I found out tonight is that I'm like the only thing that stands between you and spring break, right? Yeah, okay. Good evening, first of all. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm very appreciative of the School of Business in inviting me to talk here tonight. And I'm sorry, I have to have my glasses. Tonight's presentation is in recognition of Women's History and Awareness Month. And I didn't know what that was, so I actually had to go look it up. It's an annual declared month worldwide that highlights the contributions of women to events in history and contemporary society. Another thing you'll notice when you look at the brochure is that as the presentation tonight is being sponsored by the university on behalf of Grace T. Blair, who actually was the first woman to graduate from the School of Business here at Eastern in 1936, so she's even older than I am. And she was in the U.S. Women's Marine Corps in World War II. She earned her graduate degree and taught until her retirement. And Grace was someone who really encouraged young women to take the opportunity to go to college. And so I think she's a great example of what I'm going to be talking about tonight, which is leadership and the opportunity to give back. And Grace was clearly someone who did that. So it's a real honor for me to give a brief moment of recognition to her tonight. So when I chose the topic tonight, I thought about my career to date, almost 30 years, and what I believe makes people successful. So all of you here are pursuing your education to choose a particular vocation or career once you leave Eastern. And so I thought, well, what makes people successful, and so an aspect that allows them to leave good things behind them in their various experiences. And the item that resonated through my work experience, personal experience, and volunteer experience was leadership in many different circumstances and many different forms. So it just wasn't leadership in the workplace, it was leadership in my personal life and leadership in the volunteer place. So what I want to do is share some thoughts about leadership with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the scholar or the education view, because I thought you could take a few pointers from that. What the experts say about leadership, and then portray that to, or translate that to, some of my own personal experiences. And then I have a request for you. So you can work on this when you're on the beach next week. It's to take 2 or 3 things away that would fit for your personal style or perhaps your career choice, where you can be a more effective leader in the future and really make a difference to those you're working with or those who may be working for you. Okay. Well, I wanted to start off with a little bit of a definition. So what is leadership? Leadership is organizing a group of people to achieve a common goal. Very simple. What is a leader? A leader is a person capable of inspiring and a person capable to associate others with a dream. So let me just say this about leadership. It's not just when you're a boss or a supervisor. I know I always thought, well, leadership, that means I have to have a title or something. But it's really not. I think that's a common misinterpretation. Leadership is really each individual's position in how they fit within a specific team, group, organizational structure, etc. So for example, I've never been the CEO of a company. So I've never been the top dog, so to speak, the top boss. But I've had many leadership roles during my career. Some were assigned to me. Some of them I chose to pursue. And others happened really due to circumstances. There was a void. I stepped in to fill the void. And one of my favorite quotes that I saw during my preparation was actually this one done by John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams was one of the first handful of presidents of the United States. and was in that responsibility during a very trying time in the US, which was shortly after the revolution. And he said, if your actions inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. And so while that applied over 200 years ago, I think it still applies today. Okay, well, let's talk about what the scholars and the educators say about leadership. And there are, a few theories, I guess, about what makes a good leader. Some say you're born with it. It's part of your wiring or not. Others say it's really environmental. You have to be at the right place at the right time. Still others say leadership's about learned characteristics. It's things that you can actually be taught. The reality, in my view, is a leader is someone who makes the effort to do so because they always make a difference when they make that effort. Well, why am I right about that? I might get to make this up. I've had at least 2,000 different people work for me during my career responsibilities. So when I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, I had several hundred people working for me at various times during my career there. And then I was at Bearing Point, I had 900 men and women work directly for me as part of the Global Finance Organization. So I have a lot of experience in seeing leaders, seeing people be effective. And those that took time to work to be a leader always made a difference in those environments. So let's talk about the elements of leadership. So what did the scholars and experts say about what it takes to be a leader? These are the commonly used traits. And if you would go out and do research, you might see that there are others as well that would be on the list. Honesty, forward thinking, someone who's capable, someone who has the ability to inspire others, and someone who has intelligence. And while this list may not always be the same if you went out and did your research, there's one common theme that everyone seems to agree on. And that is merely portraying these traits is not necessarily what makes a leader. It's the ability to actually have the application and demonstrate these traits in someone's day-to-day role as a leader. What they say is if you exhibit these traits, others will have a desire to follow you. Showing these traits will inspire others so that they will have confidence in your leadership and follow you. And I would say, kind of think about it this way. If you're an honest person, people don't necessarily know that just because you don't do something that's dishonest, right? They don't know. But if they see you in your day-to-day application, making fair decisions, being open with them about different issues that you may be addressing in the workplace, then they will view you as an honest person. I think it really goes to the saying, lead by example. That would be my experience. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about each one of these 5 traits. Honesty. What the experts say is people want to follow an honest leader. So think about maybe when you're on your job or whatever, are you suspicious of your boss? I know I was, for the first several bosses I had in my career, I was always a little suspicious of them. But when they dealt with me in a fair and reasonable manner, I believed that they were honest people and enjoyed working with them. And there are going to be times in your career when you would rather avoid the truth. And I would say in my career I've had probably several hundred of those if I messed something up or did something wrong. And whether that's a situation when you're evaluating someone, making cost cuts due to budget constraints or other circumstances. And as painful as it may be, people just want you to tell the truth. So let me give you an example here. When I was at Bearing Point, we were going through cost cutting, and the finance organization was an area that was selected for cost cutting, and I really felt that that was something that we needed to accomplish there as well. So we were looking at offshoring to India or the Philippines certain finance functions. And in order to introduce this to the staff, it was a global staff, so we didn't really have a choice. We were going to do a video conference, and we had outside experts and human resource people, et cetera, advising us on that. And so they said to me, well, you know, Judy, you don't need to worry about this because you're the CFO. We'll take care of this for you in announcing this to your team. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, you're not. I've worked with this team for 3 years. I'm going to do the video because if they hear it from me, they know they'll get the truth. Because I always was straightforward with them whenever we had any changes in the organization, so I want to do this call. And they were kind of shocked by that, but I really felt as the leader of that group, it was important that they heard it from me because they knew that I was an honest leader in dealing with them in the past. Another aspect, forward thinking. Well, simple. People have to know where they're going. But many that you will lead at various times in your career don't really have the discipline to think forward or really how to map it out to get from where they are today to where things need to go in the future. So from a standpoint of dealing with forward thinking, I dealt with that in what I call a shared vision approach. My team usually knew what they needed to do and where to go, but they just really weren't able to map it out. So my job was to work with them to put forth the best path to let them do their job, and then I just sat back and let them do it and ran interference. I hardly ever came up with the ideas when it was forward-thinking items because it's not my skill set. I'm not a particularly strategic thinking person. However, I showed them the vision of here's where we are. They brought the, well, here's where we think we need to be, and I worked with them to develop the steps all along the way. I used my learned knowledge and business experience to fill the gap to forward thinking. So it's something very important when you're thinking about leadership is not just to look at today, but to look out in the future. Another area that the experts noted was you have to be capable to be a leader. And I would say here we all have our abilities and capabilities. So I look at out at each of you. We have some accounting majors, right? Marketing, MIS, finance, management, etc. So you all have your capabilities. And you all are going to have to be able to perform those capabilities in an effective manner in order to do your job on a day-to-day basis. The biggest issue, though, I see with leaders here is many of them don't know when they're over their heads. It's not that they aren't capable, they just don't know when they've taken on more than they should. So my example here, I'm an accountant, okay, I have my CPA. Accountants are someone who's typically viewed as being low risk tolerant. And as a result, I think many accountants that I've worked with tend to underplay their capabilities. Now, for those of you who might aspire to be a CEO of an organization or are more of a marketing and sales orientation, my experience in working with individuals who have that aspect or background, they don't really think they have any limitations, and as a result, sometimes they make bad decisions. So my advice here on being a capable leader is that you're all very capable. Just know your limitations. Someone said long ago, Abraham Lincoln, and I'm going to change it just a little bit, nearly all men and women can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man or a woman's character, give them power. This gets to being a capable leader. Know your limitations and know when you're over your head, so to speak. Okay. Another area for leadership, which I probably should have put at the last one, is your trait has to be the ability to inspire others. And I would have to say of this whole area, it's probably not my strong suit. I'm not the cheerleader type, not the rah-rah type. But because I had the other 4 areas right and was effective at them, that allowed my team to create success, which in turn inspired them. So let me give you an example of what I experienced here. When I was at Bearing Point, The accounting group we had a lot of work to do. I was hired to redo several years of financial restatements. So it was a lot of overtime, a lot of weekends, etc. And people wanted to transfer to my department. And so everyone was like, why do they want to transfer to your department? Because they're just going to have to work more. Well, that was because my team knew what they were going to be doing for the next 12 to 18 months. Our goals were outlined, their part of the goals was clear, and most importantly, how they could be productive in getting toward those goals was also outlined for them. Another thing that I did that developed inspiration was I had an open door policy, which meant anytime someone had an issue, no matter what level they were. I remember one night when I got a call from, I always said open door policy, so a staff from our business in the UK called and said, I can't figure out how to do my expense report. Can you help me? And I was like, okay, I'm happy to help you with that. But anyhow, I had an open door policy. I would go to lunch with staff, remember their names, ask about their child, new puppy, or whatever was important to them in their life. My point in saying that is, and it seems very trivial, but inspiration is something that each of us have, and our ability to inspire others. And when you work at being a good leader, people will let you do that in your own unique way. So while I wasn't the cheerleader type and the rah-rah type, because I was truly interested in the work that my team had, working together with them, and a little bit about their personal lives, that was inspiring to them. Okay, the last area, intelligence as a leadership trait. And I'm sure this is no secret to you, but college graduation is really just the beginning of your education, not the end. In fact, what you're taught here at Awesome EIU is really a foundation for a lifelong educational experience. To develop intelligence, you need to commit to continual learning, both formally and informally. There is such a wealth of information out there. When I was preparing for my comments tonight, I'm not an expert on leadership, even though I've had that responsibility in many ways. I actually went out and did the research. I did it on Google, and you could actually get whole books and manuscripts and all this information out there that was excellent. So there's lots of information available to you to continue your education. To develop intelligence, you need to commit to continual learning, both formally and informally. My favorite time at work was to listen to others and ask questions about what they were thinking and what they were talking about. I learned so much just by sitting and listening to the team as they were discussing a particular issue. It allowed me to see the issue from their perspective, which was much more valuable than seeing it from my perspective. That time really gave me the ability to see a problem in a much more multifaceted way because I had their input as well. My experience as a leader, leaders love to learn. They love to be able to see things in a different light. They do that because they want to do the best for the team they're leading and for those for whom they're responsible. So what's the summary on the traits of a leader? You all have these characteristics. Just utilize them when you're put in a situation of responsibility to work with a small team, maybe 1 or 2 people, or even a larger group. I mean, my guess is at some point there will be many people in this room that might have more responsibilities in their careers than I've had. So use your ability and knowledge in these areas to be a good leader. Okay, another tip about leadership, now that we have a handle on the basic traits of leadership. If you want to be a leader, or even if you don't get put in that position, you need to rethink your decision-making process, changing it from one step at a time, which is what I would see most new people to their career, the approach that they would take, to having a master plan that you're actually implementing. So it's taking the decisions from the present today and thinking about them in the longer term. a few comments they made with this. Think about each action you take from a perspective of a leader. Keep your leadership activities in a realm you can influence and make all the important decisions. Said another way, don't make commitments today that you can't deliver in the longer term. Know your limitations and prepare for what needs to be done. And I have to say, probably the only thing that would really get me annoyed with people working for me is if they didn't come to a particular meeting or whatever prepared, because they didn't really have the longer term view to take that meeting from the particular issue or problem that we were dealing with in the short term to the solution in the longer term if they weren't prepared. Set the goal and keep repeating it. You may have to change the goal along the way, and sometimes we make mistakes. I know I've made a lot of mistakes. But be clear why there is a change and always focus on how it fits into the original set of goals. And I think the reward for you when you keep this in mind of changing the process from short term to long term is you will be able to create leaders. It's often said, leaders create leaders. And one opportunity that I had when I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, I had someone from the national office in New York call one day and say, we're coming out to visit you. Well, typically, that didn't mean anything good when they were coming to visit. So I said, okay. They came out to visit and they said, we want to talk with you about what you're doing in your office to make partners, because it's a great reward for the people working there to make partner, not only from a standpoint of job security, but also a standpoint of finances and the amount of money that they could make. And so they said, so your office here in St. Louis statistically has developed and successfully campaigned more partners than any other office in the US, and we want to understand what you do to make that happen. And I said, well, it's my job to create new partners and future leaders for this firm. I'm not always going to be here, so I want to make sure that I'm leaving people behind that can kind of pick up and carry on. That was the main reason. So your reward is creating people to take your place and to be future leaders. Okay, and so these just aren't all my words. This is what the experts say about leadership and what is the most important skill for a new leader. Jim Estill, constant learning. Public speaking is important. Take Toastmasters. David Zinger, connection skills. Connection to work, organization, and the people you lead. Getting everyone to connect to an authentic level with their strengths and leverage those strengths to the service of organization. Jim Cathcart, thought. Leaders must keep things in perspective. Keep the desired outcomes in mind. John Gordon, connect and communicate. Leadership is not so much about what you do, it's about how you can encourage and inspire others to do things. It's about creating a vision and communicating that vision to others. Buster Brown, humility. John F. Kennedy, leaders are perpetual learners. An attitude of openness toward learning, learning from every single incident, however trivial it may seem at the time, is an important thing to do as a leader. Tad Thompson, unique voice. Leaders must develop their unique voice for whatever the circumstance. Shelley Holmes, one of my favorite ones, integrity. Leaders have to have integrity. Others are looking for you to set the tone, to set the particular ethics or whatever in a situation, and as a leader, you must have integrity. Wilson Ramirez. Most common mistake he's seen leaders make is the assumption that people have to follow you. They don't. People follow you as a leader because they choose to, not because you make them. His most important tip about a leader, be self-aware. Without a proper knowledge of ourselves, it's difficult to properly lead other people. Leadership requires a fine awareness of what other people are feeling and the use of our own personality and abilities to lead them with, through, and in spite of their feeling. By knowing ourselves first, we can know other people. Just a comment I'll make here on the items I've said about leadership. my leadership era versus your era, because I know it's very different, right? Most of you were not born probably when I started my career. I'm pretty sure most of you weren't born when I started my career back in 1982. And there's been a couple of really big changes that have happened during that time. The first one is technology. Having the internet, iPhones, cell phones, Blackberries, iPads, whatever, is a wonderful technological thing to do because it makes us more efficient, and it also allows us to communicate more with coworkers or whatever. The only thing I'll say about technology is email. And instead of just sitting there typing out an email to someone and sending it off, think about what you're communicating during that process so that you can get part of your personality and focus with that individual across the email. And the other thing is don't ever send an email when you're mad, because you'll definitely regret it later. Too much evidence left behind, I guess. The other thing that I will say from a leadership perspective that's very different from my era, or at least the initial parts of that era, to what you're facing today, is we have a very global nature of our business. I think 30 years ago when I started in the workforce, we didn't have faxes, we didn't have computers, and all of those things. So our ability to work on a global basis and be influenced by global aspects to our business was somewhat limited, just because of the lack of communication and information that was available. Today, the global nature of our economy and the global nature of information has a substantial impact on businesses here in the US, if that's where you choose to work. So I think you just need to be aware of that, and that we have a very global impact on our economy here, and be knowledgeable about that, what that means to the specific area you're working in, and how you can use that knowledge to positively influence your career. Well, what did I learn about being a leader? Be curious about people rather than being in judgment of them. Some of the people that I may not have liked the most at the beginning actually were some that I got the most information and knowledge learning from later on as we developed a more close relationship. Be willing to take the path less traveled. Don't be afraid of creativity and counterintuitive thinking, because sometimes that's really what you need in the particular circumstance. Rely on others, delegate. People love but also need to do important work, so let them. I mean, I could have kept all the important work and, going and meeting with this important person or that important person. I could have kept that all to myself, but I let my team participate in that. So if they worked on a project, they actually got to go to the meeting with me and present. And that really made them proud of their work, and it made their work important to them in what they were doing at that particular time. Accept people for what they are. And I have a secret for you. That's because they're not going to change. When you accept people for what they are, that builds rapport, and it really allows you to create some incredible magic in the workplace when you start accepting people for all the unique skill sets and thoughts that they have to bring to the particular place. What I learned most of all in my past career and future career, I loved building other leaders. When my team's successful and got the promotion or got a specifically difficult task completed and were recognized for that, it just made my day. I loved building other leaders and having that relationship with them throughout my work career. So that gets to you all as a leader. And I know you're all saying, well, gee, I'm just, I'm in my sophomore year or senior year or my graduate program. What does this really have to do with me as a leader? Well, you have the traits, the 5 traits that we talked about. You have those. So nurture them. Know your limitations about how you can apply that specific skill set and work to be a leader. Because I think you'll all do a great job with that. And I think then as you work to be a leader, there also comes a responsibility with that. And just a few statistics here for you. When I was doing my research, I came across these and I was actually stunned, shocked at the statistics. I don't know if you all realize, but you are a small percentage of the US population, a privileged small percentage of the US population. Only 70% of students in public high schools graduate. Of that 70% who graduate, only 32% of those are even college ready when they graduate. And I'm sure someone could help me with the math here, because you're much faster than I am with it. But of that, the resultant 21% that could even go to college, even a smaller amount of those finish college and get to graduate. Bottom line, only about 1.3 million men and women per year graduate. I was stunned. I would have thought it was 10 million or some number like that. Now, I know sometimes it can be difficult going through college and be like, why is that a privilege? You know, I work 3 jobs, I have student loans, etc. Well, trust me, with that statistic of only 1.3 million going out into the workforce as college graduates each year, that's a substantial privilege that you have. My personal opinion, because of this privilege you have, I think you also have an obligation. And that obligation is to be the best leader that you can be in whatever the circumstances are, and bring your skill set and energy to help others. Those you work with, those in your community, your alma mater, your family, etc. I think the privilege that you have requires you to give back, just like Claire did earlier in her career many years ago. I've had great opportunities in my lifetime from both a career and work perspective. I've been innumerable places. I've seen a lot of things, done a lot of things. And now in my semi-retirement, although it hasn't felt that way the last month, but in my semi-retirement stage, I can use those experiences and the financial resources that I got as a result of my careers and that I've earned to give back. And I think it's no surprise, at least, that scholarship education is a particular area that I've chosen to give back. Here at Eastern, I set up a fund to provide dollars for a selected professor each year to get additional educational opportunities. I also work with a lot of nonprofits where they don't have the dollars and resources to hire individuals to help them with strategic issues or how they can raise more money in order to service their needs. So I do that on a volunteer basis to help with the particular issues. And that's something that I have found very rewarding to do. And it's because I had the opportunity as a leader that gave me the opportunity to give back and fulfill that obligation. So my question to you is, leaving here today, what are you going to do to be a leader and use the incredible skill set that you already have? How are you going to give back in the future when the time comes when there are others who could use your leadership skills to help them out? So that's my question to you tonight. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Any that anyone wrote down or want to raise their hand?
Judy, I'd like to ask a question. It sounds like you've been competing with people from bigger name schools than EIU. Have you ever in your life felt like, oh, I just graduated from EIU and I can't compete with these people from Harvard and wherever?
Yes. Sure. When I, in many experiences in my business career, when I started at PricewaterhouseCoopers, I was one of 43 that started in my beginning class. And many of these individuals I started with went to bigger name schools. And so initially I was like, oh man, you know, how am I going to compete against these people? But the reality of it was, and I said this to some of the students today that I talked with, it wasn't about being the smartest person in the room, and it wasn't about where I went to school. It was about my ability to take the skills and the good foundation education, the incredible foundation education I got here at Eastern, to take that and use it every single day in my job and be tenacious and work hard, etc. And the result was, out of that group of 43, there were 2 of us that made partner, me from Eastern, and a friend of mine, John Altoff, who went to the University of Missouri St. Louis, which is a commuter school. So that's kind of my into the story. But yeah, initially I felt intimidated, but I realized later on that that was stupid, because the education that I got here was superior, I think, to what the other students got. Any other questions? Did anyone write any down? Where are good places to go on spring break? I'm going skiing. I leave Thursday. I think they have 140 inches of snow. So I'm looking for, that's a lot of snow. I'm looking forward to that. Montana. You know, that's what everyone says. We're going someplace warm. I love to ski, and I love the mountains, and I ride competitively, horses competitively. So on days when I'm not working, I still get up every morning at 6:30 and go out to the barn, whether it's 10 degrees or 60 degrees. So, any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. I wish all of you the best in your careers, and I really appreciate your time and attention tonight. Thank you.